It's December 26, 1900. A supply ship, the Hesperus, reaches the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, 20 miles off the coast of the Outer Hebrides, Scotland. It's 2 weeks late, delayed by rough weather. The crew expects 3 men to greet them. Instead, they find an empty tower. The door is unlocked, the beds are unmade. On the kitchen table, a meal sits half-eaten. Cold porridge congealed in a bowl. A chair lies overturned on the floor, like someone stood up fast and didn't push it back in. 2 sets of oilskins are missing from their hooks by the door. 1 set remains. The logbook on the desk ends mid-sentence. The last entry is dated December 15th. It reads, "Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all." There are no signs of a struggle, no blood, no note. Just 3 men, vanished. This isn't legend. This is what the relief crew found, documented in black and white. For 124 years, it has been the primary source on the Flannan Isles disappearance. The men were James Ducat, 40, the principal keeper, a 21-year veteran of the Northern Lighthouse Board, Thomas Marshall, 28, and Donald MacArthur, 40, a former soldier and occasional keeper. They were not adventurers, they were civil servants. Their job was routine: trim the wicks, polish the 3-ton Fresnel lens, keep the light burning through the North Atlantic winter. Protocol was absolute. 1 man was required to remain in the tower at all times. The other 2 could work outside, but never all 3 at once. It was the one rule that kept lighthouse crews alive in isolation. So the first question isn't what killed them. It's why all 3 broke that rule. To answer that, you have to walk the island. The Hesperus crew documented everything when they landed. At the west landing, 70 feet above sea level, they found iron railings twisted like wire. Not bent, twisted. The supply crane used to haul boxes up from boats was wrecked. Its cast iron arm snapped off. A heavy mooring rope, thick as your arm, was frayed and tangled across the rocks like it had been whipped by something massive. The wooden box that held the landing equipment was smashed to splinters. Something violent had happened here, something strong enough to bend metal and shatter hardwood. But the landing faced west, into the open Atlantic, and waves didn't reach that high. Not in any record the Northern Lighthouse Board had. In 60 years of operation, water had never touched that platform. The tower itself was built 150 feet above sea level for that exact reason. So if it wasn't the sea, what was it? For years, the theories wrote themselves. A passing ship took them. A sea serpent dragged them down. Donald MacArthur, the ex-soldier, killed the other 2 in a fit of cabin fever, then threw himself off the cliff. The logbook didn't help. It made things worse. In the final days, Thomas Marshall's handwriting changes. It gets shaky. On December 12th, he writes that Ducat was very quiet, that MacArthur was crying. Keepers don't cry. Keepers don't go silent. Keepers log weather, lamp oil, and the time. They don't log emotions. The board even noted later that this was highly irregular. That's when the story stops being about a disappearance and starts being about fear. What did they see on December 15th? Because the weather records are the next problem. From December 12th to 14th, the log describes a storm so severe it shook the entire 75-foot granite tower. Marshall wrote that Ducat said he'd never seen such a storm in 20 years. He also noted waves were breaking over the cliff tops, higher than the 150-foot lighthouse foundation. But on December 15th, the entry changes. Marshall wrote, "Storm ended, sea calm." And then the entries stop. For a century, that gap made no sense. Why would 3 experienced men leave the safety of the tower after a storm that violent? Why would they all go to the most exposed part of the island? Modern meteorology gives us the answer the 1900 investigation didn't have. Storms don't just end. They create a phenomenon called constructive interference. When swells from different directions collide, they can form rogue waves. Single waves, 3 times larger than anything around them. Unpredictable. Unsurvivable. A 100-foot wall of water can form in calm seas after a storm. The physical evidence says the men weren't taken. They were working. The crane at the west landing was damaged in the storm. Lighthouse protocol required them to secure it immediately. If that crane failed, they'd lose the ability to bring supplies up the cliff. They'd be stranded for the winter with no food or coal. The next scheduled ship wasn't for months. 1 man in the tower wasn't enough to haul rope and timber and bolt down iron, so they all went. They went out onto a platform 70 feet above the sea because no wave had ever reached it before, because the logbook said sea calm, because the rules said the equipment came first. They were wrong. One wave. That's all it would take. No struggle. No time to run. It would bend the railings, smash the box, strip the men from the rock, and leave behind one set of oilskins on a hook, belonging to the man who was still inside, maybe calling them back, or the man who realized too late what was coming. The overturned chair, the half-eaten meal, that wasn't panic. That was just life interrupted. They stepped out to do a 20-minute job. The Northern Lighthouse Board's official report was one sentence: an unusually large wave swept the men away. They were right, but in 1900, rogue wave wasn't science, it was folklore. Sailors told stories about them, but scientists dismissed them as myth until the Draupner wave was measured at 84 feet in 1995, so the case became a mystery. Today, we track rogue waves by satellite. We've measured them at 95 feet in the North Sea. We know they exist. And meteorological reconstructions of December 1900 show the storm tracks were perfect to generate one at the Flannan Isles. The three keepers didn't vanish. They didn't go mad. They were doing their job. And the ocean did what the ocean does. It doesn't need a reason. It doesn't leave a note. It just takes. What do you think about this mystery? Comment down below.